The marble floor of Horizon Trust Bank Chicago headquarters gleamed under the chandeliers, a symbol of wealth and power in the heart of the Windy City. It was a busy Monday morning, and the lobby buzzed with sharply dressed executives and clients sipping overpriced coffee. But in one fleeting moment, everything froze. A sharp clack echoed through the grand hall as a plastic ID card hit the cold stone floor, skidding a few feet before coming to a stop. Ethan Caldwell, the bank's senior manager, stood behind the counter, his smug grin as polished as his $500 Italian loafers. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "but IDs like this don't exactly scream trustworthy around here. Maybe try the credit union a couple blocks down on Michigan Avenue." The man he'd just insulted, James Carter, stood motionless for a heartbeat. At 62, James was a striking figure, a black man with a lean, athletic build, silver hair neatly trimmed, and a face that carried both warmth and wisdom. His dark eyes locked onto Ethan's, unyielding, as he bent down to pick up his ID with steady hands. The lobby fell silent. A woman in a tailored blazer whispered to her colleague. A young intern fumbled with his phone, already recording. Everyone could feel the weight of what had just happened. Ethan, oblivious, adjusted his tie and chuckled. "Some people think they can just waltz into Horizon Trust without knowing their place," he muttered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. James straightened up, his 6-foot frame radiating a quiet dignity that seemed to fill the room. "I understand, Mr. Caldwell," he said, his voice calm but laced with steel. "Perhaps this isn't the right bank for my business." As he turned toward the glass doors, his fingers typed a quick text. "Lila, we need to talk about Horizon Trust." "Urgent." The reply came in seconds. "Dad, what's wrong?" "I'm finalizing their $5 billion deal." A faint smile curved James's lips as he stepped into the Chicago sunlight. Ethan Caldwell had no idea he'd just thrown away more than an ID. He'd tossed a $5 billion empire right out the window. Stick around, because this one moment of arrogance is about to cost him everything. In the heart of Chicago's bustling financial district, where skyscrapers pierce the clouds and deals worth billions are sealed over steak dinners, Horizon Trust Bank stood as a titan of wealth and prestige. Its polished marble lobby, stretching 50 feet wide, was a stage for the city's elite. CEOs in tailored suits, investors clutching briefcases stuffed with contracts, and bankers who thrived on power. At the center of this world was Ethan Caldwell, a 38-year-old senior manager with a corner office and a reputation for spotting high-value clients from a mile away. Ethan was the picture of corporate arrogance. 6 feet tall, always in a $2,000 Navy suit, with a slick grin that screamed Ivy League privilege. He'd spent 8 years climbing Horizon's ranks, priding himself on keeping undesirables out of his pristine bank. To Ethan, success meant filtering clients by their watches, their cars, or the cut of their jackets. And he was damn good at it, or so he thought. On the other side of the counter stood James Carter, a 62-year-old black man whose presence seemed to defy Ethan's narrow world. James was no stranger to hard work. His lean 6-foot frame was still strong from decades of building his first construction company from nothing in the gritty Chicago winters of the 1980s. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, framing a face that was both handsome and weathered, with deep-set eyes that held stories of triumph over adversity. His hands, calloused from years of manual labor, told of a life spent breaking barriers, racial, economic, and personal. Dressed in a simple button-up shirt and khakis, James carried himself with a quiet dignity that didn't need a Rolex or a Mercedes to prove his worth. He'd sold his company for a 9-figure fortune years ago, but you'd never know it from his unassuming demeanor. As James stood in the lobby, the air thick with tension from Ethan's public insult, the contrast between the two men was stark. Ethan saw a nobody. James saw a man who'd underestimated him before he'd even spoken a word. The other clients, some whispering, some staring, sensed something bigger was at play. James's calm response, "Perhaps this isn't the right bank for my business," wasn't just a polite exit. It was the first move in a chess game Ethan didn't even know he was playing. And in Chicago, a city built on ambition and grit, James Carter was about to remind everyone that true power doesn't always wear a suit. The tension in Horizon Trust Bank's Chicago lobby was thick enough to choke on. Ethan Caldwell, perched behind his sleek mahogany counter, wasn't done flexing his authority. His hazel eyes narrowed as he sized up James Carter, the 62-year-old black man he'd just humiliated by tossing his ID onto the marble floor. James, standing 6 feet tall with a calm that unnerved the room, mentioned opening a business account. For large corporations, he added, his voice steady. Ethan's laugh cut through the silence like a blade. Large corporations? You? He scoffed, loud enough for the 20-foot-high ceilings to carry his words. Let's not waste my time, pal. Horizon Trust deals with real players, folks with private jets, not bus passes. The crowd gasped. A woman in a Chanel suit clutched her purse, her eyes darting between the two men. A young guy in a hoodie pulled out his phone, live streaming to his 5,000 TikTok followers with a caption, "This dude's about to regret this." Ethan's assistant, Sarah, a 25-year-old with a nervous smile, stepped forward. "Mr. Caldwell, maybe we should check his documents?" she ventured, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan waved her off like swatting a fly. "Sarah, sweetheart, don't bother. This guy's got no business here." He leaned forward, his $200 cologne wafting across the counter. "Look, Mr. Carter, is it? Stick to banks that match your vibe. You're out of your league by a couple $1,000,000. The lobby buzzed with whispers. A businessman in a pinstripe suit shook his head, muttering, "That's cold." Another client posted a clip to Twitter, tagging #Horizon Trust with fire emojis. James's expression didn't waver. His deep-set eyes locked onto Ethan's, a flicker of steel beneath his calm. "I respect your standards, Mr. Caldwell," he said, each word deliberate. "But standards should include respect for everyone who walks through that door." He turned toward the exit, his polished shoes clicking on the marble. Ethan smirked, already turning to charm a white-haired client in a Rolex. He had no clue that James's quiet exit wasn't defeat. It was the calm before a storm that would rip his career apart. And that storm was already brewing, just one text message away. James Carter stepped out of Horizon Trust Bank's gleaming glass doors and into the Chicago sunlight, his polished shoes tapping softly on the sidewalk along Michigan Avenue. The sting of Ethan Caldwell's insult lingered, but James's face showed no trace of anger, only a calm that felt like the quiet before a thunderstorm. At 62, with his lean 6-foot frame and silver hair catching the midday glow, he moved with the confidence of a man who'd faced worse and won. His calloused hands, scarred from building a construction empire in Chicago's South Side during the 1980s, gripped his phone as he typed a message to his daughter, Lila. "Horizon Trust isn't what we thought. We need to talk. Urgent." Within seconds, Lila replied, "Dad, what happened?" "I'm in a meeting finalizing their $5 billion contract." James's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Let's just say their customer service needs work," he texted back. "Meet me at home tonight." Back in the bank, Ethan Caldwell was still chuckling, regaling a coworker with his takedown of the nobody who dared walk into Horizon Trust. "Can you believe that guy thought he belonged here?" he said, sipping a $6 latte, oblivious to the TikTok clip now racking up 10,000 views under #Horizon Trust discrimination. But James wasn't just any guy. Decades ago, he'd started with nothing. No loans, no connections, just grit. When banks like Horizon turned him away, he'd worked 18-hour days, hammering nails in 20-degree Chicago winters to build homes for families like his own. By 1995, his company was worth $100 million. Sold for a fortune he quietly invested across 3 states. To the world, he was a retired contractor in khakis. To those who knew him, he was a legend. As James walked the 2 blocks to his parked Lincoln Navigator, he glanced back at the bank's towering facade. Ethan's smug face flashed in his mind, but so did Lila's voice from their last dinner. "Dad, this $5 billion deal with Horizon is our biggest yet." James's eyes narrowed, his calm masking a plan already forming. Ethan Caldwell had no idea he'd just insulted the father of Apex Innovation CEO, a man whose next move would shake Chicago's financial world to its core. In the cozy dining room of James Carter's brownstone on Chicago's South Side, the air was heavy with purpose. The 62-year-old sat across from his daughter, Lila Carter, CEO of Apex Innovations, as the city's skyline twinkled through the window. Lila, a sharp 38-year-old in a tailored blazer, poured 2 mugs of coffee, her hands trembling with barely contained fury. "He threw your ID on the floor? Like it was garbage?" she asked, her voice low but laced with ice. James, his silver hair catching the soft glow of the pendant light, nodded calmly. His 6-foot frame leaned back in the oak chair, but his deep-set eyes burned with resolve. "Not just that, Lila," he said, sliding a folder across the 10-foot-long dining table. Ethan Caldwell's been careless for years. Inside the folder were printouts that made Lila's jaw tighten. Screenshots of Ethan's LinkedIn posts, dripping with subtle prejudice about client standards and cultural fit. One email, leaked by a former Horizon Trust employee, called Black Entrepreneurs Risky Bets. James's voice was steady but firm. I've faced men like him since I was building my first company in the 80s, working 18-hour days in 15-degree snow. I learned one thing: information is power. Lila's eyes, mirrors of her father's, gleamed with a dangerous focus. Dad, that $5 billion deal with Horizon Trust is the biggest in Apex's history. But if this is how they treat you, they don't deserve a dime. Lila called her legal team, and by 9 p.m., her 30th floor office downtown was a war room. Papers littered the glass conference table, contracts, financial reports, and a highlighted Clause 19, termination permitted for discriminatory practices. Dr. Emmeline Gwynn, Apex's lead attorney, adjusted her glasses. We need concrete evidence to pull this off without a lawsuit, she warned. James leaned forward, his calloused hands clasped. Check his digital footprint. Men like Ethan don't hide their biases well. Lila nodded, her fingers flying across her laptop, pulling up more damning posts. He's about to learn what happens when you disrespect the wrong family, she said, her voice cold as Chicago's winter wind. Across town, Ethan Caldwell dined at a swanky Loop restaurant, posting a photo of his $50 steak on Instagram with #ExecutiveLife. He toasted to another day of keeping Horizon standards high, clueless that 12 miles away, a father and daughter were dismantling his world with every click. Justice was coming, and it was carrying a $5 billion price tag. In a dimly lit coffee shop 3 blocks from Horizon Trust Bank Chicago headquarters, Sarah Thompson sat hunched over a corner table, her hands trembling around a $4 cappuccino. The 25-year-old assistant to Ethan Caldwell glanced nervously at the door, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she checked her phone. At 6 p.m., Lila Carter walked in, her tailored coat cutting a sharp silhouette against the neon glow of the city. Sarah's voice cracked as she stood. "Ms. Carter, I can't keep quiet anymore," she whispered, sliding a USB drive across the 6-foot-long table. "This has everything: emails, memos, Ethan's real thoughts about clients like your dad." Lila, Apex Innovation's CEO, took the drive, her dark eyes narrowing. "Why now, Sarah?" she asked, her voice cool but not unkind. Sarah's gaze dropped to the scratched wooden floor. "I saw him throw your father's ID like it was trash. I've heard him call black clients high risk in meetings, Latino clients trouble. I thought it was just talk, but it's wrong." The USB held a bombshell, an email chain where Ethan mocked a black entrepreneur's $2 million proposal as a diversity quota gamble. Another memo flagged minority clients for extra scrutiny. Sarah's hands shook. "I'm risking my job, but your dad deserved better." Across town, Ethan Caldwell paced his 15th floor office at Horizon Trust, his $200 tie loosened. The TikTok clip of his clash with James Carter had hit 50,000 views, and whispers of a PR crisis were circling. "Who's leaking dirt on me?" he snapped into his phone, his slick confidence cracking. He'd noticed Sarah's unease all week, her averted eyes, her quiet replies. "If it's you, Sarah, you're done," he muttered, slamming his fist on the desk. But Ethan had no idea the USB in Lila's hands was about to turn his world upside down. Lila met Sarah's gaze, softening. "You're doing the right thing. My father taught me that courage isn't loud. It's standing up when it's hard." Sarah nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. As Lila left, clutching the drive, the Chicago skyline loomed outside, its lights reflecting a city about to witness a reckoning. Ethan's arrogance had bred enemies within his own walls, and Sarah's betrayal was the spark that would ignite a $5 billion firestorm. The 40th floor boardroom of Horizon Trust Bank Chicago headquarters buzzed with nervous energy. Crystal chandeliers cast light across a 20-foot mahogany table where executives in $3,000 suits shifted uncomfortably. Ethan Caldwell, his gold cufflinks glinting, stood at one end, expecting a promotion for landing a $5 billion deal. Then the glass doors swung open, and in walked Lila Carter, Apex Innovation CEO, her tailored blazer radiating authority. Beside her stood James Carter, 62, his 6-foot frame impeccable in a charcoal suit, his silver hair gleaming, and his deep-set eyes locked on Ethan with unshakable calm. The room froze. "Mr. Caldwell," Lila said, her voice sharp as a Lake Michigan wind, "I believe you've met my father, James Carter." Ethan's smirk vanished, his face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. His hands, trembling, gripped the table's edge. "Miss Carter, There was a misunderstanding," he stammered, sweat beading on his brow. Lila opened her briefcase, pulling out a tablet and the USB Sarah had risked everything to provide. "A misunderstanding," she repeated, her tone icy. She tapped the screen, projecting Ethan's damning LinkedIn posts, comments about client standards and cultural risks, and an email calling black clients high risk. A grainy TikTok clip played next, Ethan tossing James's ID onto the lobby floor, his laugh echoing. Gasps rippled through the room. The regional director, Michael Hayes, turned ashen. "Ethan, what is this?" he demanded. James stepped forward, his voice steady but commanding. "You judged me by my skin, Mr. Caldwell, not my worth. You threw my ID like trash, but you threw away something bigger." Lila slid a contract across the table, Clause 19 highlighted, "Termination for discriminatory practices." "Horizon Trust," she declared, "has lost our $5 billion partnership, effective immediately." Ethan collapsed into his chair, his 180-pound frame deflating. "Please, I didn't know," he whispered, his voice cracking. Michael tried to intervene. "Miss Carter, we'll fire him right now." But James raised a hand. "This isn't about one man. It's about a culture that lets him thrive." As James and Lila turned to leave, Ethan's desperate pleas echoed behind them. The boardroom doors closed with a thud, sealing Ethan's fate. Outside, Chicago's skyline stretched endlessly, a city that rewarded grit over arrogance. Ethan had gambled on prejudice and lost everything. James and Lila, hand in hand, had turned humiliation into a $5 billion lesson that would echo far beyond the Windy City. The fallout hit Horizon Trust Bank like a Midwest tornado. By noon the next day, the TikTok clip of Ethan Caldwell tossing James Carter's ID onto the marble floor had exploded to 2 million views, with hashtag Horizon Trust Discrimination trending on Twitter across Chicago's 234 square miles. The 15-second video looped endlessly online, Ethan's smug laugh and James's unshakable dignity fueling a firestorm of outrage. News vans parked outside the bank's 40-story headquarters, their satellite dishes gleaming under the Illinois sun. Reporters swarmed, microphones ready, as furious clients lined up at the telewindows, withdrawing millions in deposits. "I'm done with this bank," one woman shouted. Her $50,000 account closed in minutes. By 3 p.m., Horizon stock had plummeted 12%, erasing $300 million in market value. Ethan Caldwell, once the golden boy of Chicago's banking scene, hid in his 15th-floor office, blinds drawn, as his phone buzzed with notifications. His Instagram, once flooded with hashtag executive life posts, was now a graveyard of deleted comments and hate messages. "Racist jerk," one read. "You cost us billions," said another. A local news anchor grilled him in a leaked voicemail. "Mr. Caldwell, care to explain why you humiliated a client?" Ethan's hands shook as he muted his phone, his $200 tie now a wrinkled noose. He tried to issue a canned apology on LinkedIn, but it only poured gasoline on the flames. "Too late," tweeted a Chicago influencer with 100,000 followers. Meanwhile, James Carter sat calmly at a Southside diner, sipping a $3 coffee, his 6-foot frame relaxed in a booth. He scrolled through Twitter, reading comments like, "James Carter is a legend," and hashtag Justice for James. The city's pulse beat with support for the man who'd turned humiliation into a movement. Lila Carter, in her downtown office, fielded calls from CNN and the Chicago Tribune, her voice steady as she confirmed Apex's decision to ditch Horizon Trust. "We don't do business with prejudice," she said, her words shared 10,000 times online. As Chicago's skyline glowed at dusk, Horizon Trust faced a reckoning. Clients walked away, investors panicked, and Ethan's name became a cautionary tale. One act of arrogance had sparked a $5 billion collapse, proving that in the age of viral videos, disrespect doesn't just cost you your job, it can bring an empire to its knees. 2 weeks after the boardroom showdown, Ethan Caldwell stood in his now empty 15th-floor office at Horizon Trust Bank, his $2,000 suit replaced by a wrinkled button-up. The Chicago skyline mocked him through the window as he packed his life into a cardboard box. Fired without severance, his 8-year career was reduced to a 12-inch stack of papers and a tarnished name. Colleagues who once praised his #executive life posts now avoided eye contact in the 40-story building's hallways. "You really thought you could disrespect a client like that?" one whispered, shaking his head. The viral TikTok clip, now at 5 million views, had branded Ethan as the $5 billion mistake across Chicago's financial district. Job interviews ended the same way. "Sorry, you're the guy who tanked Horizon Trust." At 38, Ethan was unemployable, his arrogance a cautionary tale trending on LinkedIn. Meanwhile, 10 miles away in Apex Innovation's sleek downtown headquarters, James Carter adjusted his tie in a new office as strategic advisor. At 62, his 6-foot frame and silver hair commanded respect as he shook hands with Unity National Bank CEO, Marcus Lee. Lila Carter, her eyes gleaming with pride, signed a $5.3 billion deal, $300 million richer than Horizon's offer. Unity's boardroom, perched 50 stories above Chicago, buzzed with admiration for the Carter's integrity. "Mr. Carter," Marcus said, "your family's values are why we're here. Respect comes first, always." James nodded, his calloused hands resting on the contract. "I learned that lesson building homes in 20-degree winters," he replied, his voice warm but firm. The city took notice. The Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story, "Father-daughter duo redefines corporate justice." James's South Side roots became a symbol of resilience. His story shared 20,000 times on Twitter. Lila promoted Sarah Thompson, Ethan's former assistant, to a leadership role at Apex for her courage. Horizon Trust, bleeding clients and $500 million in losses, became a case study in business schools. As James walked through Apex's lobby, employees stood to applaud. Ethan's single act of prejudice had cost him everything, but for James, it was a spark that lit a legacy. In Chicago's cutthroat world, the Carters proved that dignity doesn't just win, it builds empires. In the heart of Chicago's South Side, James Carter stood in a community center, his 6-foot frame steady under the fluorescent lights of a packed room. At 62, his silver hair and warm, weathered face drew every eye as he spoke to a crowd of young entrepreneurs, many Black and Latino, who'd faced rejection from banks like Horizon Trust. "True power," James said, his voice rich with conviction, "isn't in the suit you wear or the money in your account. It's in how you treat the person standing in front of you, no matter who they are." The room erupted in applause, cell phones capturing his words for Instagram Reels and TikTok, where #JusticeForJames had hit 3 million views. His story, now a Chicago legend, was more than a viral moment. It was a movement. Across the city, Lila Carter watched her father from the back of the room, her heart swelling with pride. The $5.3 billion deal with Unity National Bank had cemented Apex Innovations as a powerhouse, but it was James's lesson that resonated. "My dad taught me that respect is the foundation of every deal, every relationship," she told a CNN reporter. Her words shared 15,000 times on Twitter. The Carters' stand against prejudice had sparked a city-wide conversation. Coffee shops buzzed with debates about corporate accountability. College students in 20-square-mile Chicago campuses launched petitions for diversity training in banks. One tweet read, "James Carter showed us, never judge a book by its cover." James's message reached beyond the Windy City. At a 500-seat business conference downtown, he shared the stage with industry leaders, his voice steady. "One act of disrespect cost Horizon Trust $5 billion. Imagine what respect could build." The crowd stood, clapping for a full minute. Back home, James mentored a young Black entrepreneur whose $50,000 startup had been rejected by 3 banks. "Keep going," James told him, his calloused hands gripping the man's shoulder. "Your worth isn't in their eyes. It's in your work." This isn't just a story. It's a call to action. Have you ever been judged unfairly? Share your story in the comments. Let's show the world that respect builds empires, while prejudice tears them down. Hit that like button, share this video, and let's keep James's message alive. The Chicago skyline sparkled under a crimson sunset, casting a glow over the South Side Community Center where James Carter's words still echoed. At 62, this 6-foot titan with silver hair had turned a single act of disrespect into a $5 billion lesson that rocked Horizon Trust Bank to its core. The viral TikTok clip, now at 7 million views, had spread James's story across every corner of the Windy City's 234 square miles, from dive bars to corporate boardrooms. His message was simple yet seismic. Never judge a book by its cover. Respect isn't just a courtesy, it's the foundation of everything that matters, from billion-dollar deals to human dignity. And now, it's your turn to keep this story alive. Picture this. James Carter, a man who built a $100 million empire from nothing, stood tall against prejudice in a 40-story Chicago skyscraper. His daughter, Lila, turned humiliation into a triumph that shut down a bank's arrogance. Their story isn't just about a $5.3 billion deal with Unity National. It's about proving that one moment of injustice can spark a movement. Chicago's coffee shops are buzzing with it. Students on 20-square-mile college campuses are tweeting #JusticeForJames. The Chicago Tribune's front page called it a corporate reckoning. But this isn't just their victory, it's ours. It's a reminder that every person you meet deserves respect, no matter their clothes, their skin, or their story. So, what can you do? Hit that like button if James and Lila's stand against prejudice fired you up. Share this video with a friend who needs to hear it. Someone who's been judged unfairly or needs a push to stand tall. Drop your story in the comments. Have you ever faced a moment like James did? How did you rise above it? Your voice matters, and together, we can make sure this message reaches every corner of the internet. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of justice that hit you right in the heart. Let's keep the conversation going, from Chicago's South Side to every city in America. As James walked out of that community center, a young entrepreneur thanked him, eyes wide with hope. "You showed me I'm enough," she said, clutching her $10,000 business plan. That's the power of this story. It's not just about tearing down arrogance, it's about building up everyone who's been counted out. So, click share, tag a friend, and let's show the world that respect always wins. As the Chicago skyline faded into twilight, James Carter stood on the balcony of Apex Innovation's 50th floor headquarters, his 6-foot frame silhouetted against the city he'd helped shape. At 62, with silver hair and a face etched with decades of resilience, he gazed at the South Side, where he'd built his first $100 million company from nothing. One act of arrogance, an ID thrown on a marble floor by Ethan Caldwell, had cost Horizon Trust Bank a $5 billion deal and turned James's story into a Chicago legend, shared 10 million times across TikTok and Twitter. But for James, it wasn't about revenge. It was about proving that dignity is the currency that builds empires. Ethan's downfall was swift. His 15th floor office now empty, his $2,000 suits traded for a 9-to-5 insurance gig, he became a cautionary tale in every 20-square-mile Chicago business school. James and Lila Carter, meanwhile, soared. Their $5.3 billion deal with Unity National Bank cemented Apex as a powerhouse. And James's role as strategic advisor inspired a generation. The Chicago Tribune called it a masterclass in justice. But the real lesson lies deeper. Respect isn't just a choice, it's a strategy for life. James taught us that every person, from the CEO in a penthouse to the dreamer with a $10,000 startup, deserves to be seen for their worth, not their appearance. So, how do you apply this? Pause before you judge. Next time you meet someone new, at a coffee shop, a job interview, or a bank counter, ask yourself, what's their story? Could they be a James Carter, carrying a legacy you can't see? Respect them first, and you'll build bridges, not barriers. In your workplace, call out prejudice, even when it's subtle. In your life, value people for their character, not their clothes. James turned one moment of disrespect into a movement that shook a 40-story bank. You can turn small acts of kindness into moments that change lives. As James and Lila stood together, hands clasped, the city below pulsed with possibility. Their story isn't just a viral hit, it's a blueprint for living. True revenge isn't tearing others down, it's rising so high they can't ignore you. So, carry this lesson forward. Respect everyone, always. Because in Chicago, and everywhere else, that's how you build a legacy that lasts. Share this story, live its truth, and let's make dignity the foundation of everything we do.